Hey guys, it's Sebastian back with another video, and today we're going to be talking on our 12th podcast here, and this is for Lost Hombres, brought to you by me, and thanks for coming back. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about some topics that have come up in the last couple weeks for me, specifically around spirituality, really understanding some of the mechanisms that are affecting everyday people, and kind of just taking a look at some of these topics that I feel are very important for us as a human species to really understand and grasp because in order for us to advance as a society, as a civilization, we got to be able to understand the mechanism, especially within ourselves, and why it's important to understand how to operate. Because when you understand how the human body operates, how the human existence operates, things become a lot more clear for people, and you can do a lot more with your life when you understand how to use life, like the mechanisms of life to exceed. Okay. So, a couple things about me. Again, I have my own modality for therapy. So, that gives me a base insight on where I get my information from, especially understanding the difference in the early childhood development compared to later adulthood development and kind of how it affects the human psyche throughout the different stages. So, a lot of that information has helped me come up with a lot of the conclusions that I've come up with. And I want to talk to you guys today about, again, how I've been able to patch some of this information together and come up with some really interesting stuff. So one of the things I want to talk about, to me, the big problem and the issue that I'm seeing, and sometimes I don't know if this is intentional or if it's just how society works, but if you look at psychology from like a perspective like where it's like based on like numbers and statistics, it's in some ways hollow, right? So like even the manual that we use is very statistical based, so there's like some sense of like hollowness because it's missing personality. Like it's very like standardized, which is good because it's good to have some sort of data and information, but it's also missing like soul. Like it's very like manualistic, literally it's a manual, right? And if you look at, spirituality or religion, it's very frou-frou, where it's like very whimsical, mythical, spiritual, fulfilling, right? It's got like the good center stuff, but it doesn't really have a lot of like ground on the outside. And to me, what's missing is that we need to be able to combine these two things. And that's really what's missing in today's world, is that we don't have these two things in combination where we're not looking at the spiritual components of existence and the psychological or the mathematical or the scientific components and seeing how they actually have a lot of overlap. There's actually a lot of things that complete each other when you really look at both of them together. And when you understand why one works, you can understand better why the other one works. It's like anti-gravity or not anti-matter and matter. In order for matter to work, there has to be something on the other side pushing back on it, right? Existence needs a pressure from both sides. And so these are the opposite pressures that actually complement each other when you fully understand why they work the way they do. So for me, coming from somebody that came more from the analytical, psychological side of things, when I was coming up with my initial information, a lot of this stuff was coming from patterns in behavior, right? Patterns that I would see in development within societies, and like going beyond just your anecdotal one versus one, looking at the broader picture of like what do you commonly see, what are like universal issues across the board, right? And what are commonalities that all human beings seem to have regardless of barriers, right? So what are cultural similarities, and even understanding what the differences are. So when you start to dig deeper on why there are so many differences and similarities, you start to really then understand how to apply that insight into building a bigger, broader perspective of what's happening. And so when you can take different, demographics that you've worked with, and you see commonalities, or even like across, borders, like different mothers all experience this, right? And different fathers experience this, and different teenagers experience, like they're going through the same problems, whether they're internal or they external. And when you start understanding these things, it gives you a lot of data and information. Now, the problem is that, again, when you look at everything from data and information, it starts to cut out the feeling part. Like, yes, it's very like statistical, which is good for base information, but that still needs some kind of remedy, right? It still needs some kind of thing that's going to heal it. And the healing component is the part that doesn't necessarily meet a statistical manual definition at times, right? So there are certain tools that are much more effective, but the way you apply the tool to each person is going to be different depending on who they are, right? Depending on what it's like people going in for a haircut. They all want the same haircut, but you're not going to be able to provide people the same haircut. But that doesn't mean they can't leave satisfied with whatever hair they do have and whatever you can do with whatever they have, right? So within their abilities or their, whatever like they're born with, their genetic makeup, there are going to be things that they're going to be able to naturally be able to get done, and the things they're going to struggle at because of, again, either pros and cons from whatever they're kind of given, whatever they're born with, right? Some people are going to have a lot more access to resources that some people don't, right? There's certain factors that are just not in our control. We are born into circumstances. But when we can understand the dance, that doesn't mean that we have to put like, oh, there's hopeless, right? Because statistically speaking, no, there's something beyond where people can feel empowerment, right? People can feel like, hey, I can get this. And this is also a good explanation for why someone could have all these resources available to them, but that doesn't mean they're going to be able to succeed, because if they don't have the drive, if they can't sustain that progress, then they're actually going to be losing out in the long run. So you need a fair share of like, you know, part of like a pushback and part of a like a pull in, right? And that ebb and flow is what allows us to get furthest in our life. This is what allows us to be successful. We need a little bit of that ebb and flow when we're going through life. So when it comes to what's going on right now and the way I see things, I see that there is a thing that's killing a lot of people these days. Okay. The number one killer in the world, from what I've seen, what I've read, is some form of heart disease, right? Heart disease is destroying a lot of people, right? That is, I mean, think about it, right? More than any other quick killer, whatever, heart disease is the thing killing the most people. So if we want to save the most lives, you would logically go to what is the biggest factor here? Okay, heart disease. Now, why is this? Right? What is it about heart disease that is so prevalent, right? And so what I come to the conclusion is that the heart, as the Egyptians would say, right? The Egyptians believed that the heart was the most valuable organ in our existence. And it's interesting, when I used to work at the Museum of Man, they kind of would like kind of laugh at it, like, hey, they thought this, haha, like, kind of like think it was funny. Like, hey, they thought this was the most important. They don't even know, right? But I understand now why they said that, because it really is the most important organ in the body by far. If you have some sort of like seizure, or if you have some sort of problem in your gut, right, you can still likely make it to the hospital. But if you have a heart attack, it's likely you're not going to make it beyond that heart attack. If you get shot in the head, shot in the gut, and shot in the heart, one of those is going to kill you a lot faster than the other ones, right? Because once the heart stops pumping, you're done. There is no more blood flow. There is no more energy being expended throughout the body to keep you going. You've lost everything. Because what makes your muscles be able to pump more? Your blood starts to rush. It starts to give it. It starts to tell it. But if you can't make your blood rush, your body's not going to be able to respond. And you have no more electrical impulse, right, pushing blood through your brain either. So you're done. So you get impacted by your heart and you're done. You're not coming back from that. And so your heart is such an important organ. It literally controls so much of what happens in your life, what you do. I mean, we literally say when somebody's heartbroken, they lose a lot of drive. They lose a lot of interest in life. Some people who can be so heartbroken that they end up dying. You see it all the time when people have their heart broken, they stop taking care of something in their life, whether they stop having fun or they stop taking care of their responsibilities. Something happens and they start to fall apart because they start to spiral out of control. So as they spiral, they start losing grip on reality and they start feeling like everything is going to just keep getting worse. So they almost create a self-fulfilling system where they keep falling down and feeling bad, falling down and feeling bad, and they keep themselves in this state. So really, what we want to do is we want to be able to take a step back and be able to like hone in on where are my deficits, where am I like holding back, where am I not pushing myself, so that I can organize myself in a way where I can follow a system where I'm going to be able to be successful in the end. And so taking that time to take a step back, analyzing what's happening, figuring out what I need to do to make change is going to be the most important thing for keeping your system going, keeping your positivity going, keeping your outcomes flowing. So we want to be able to take care of ourselves so that we can keep that flow state, right? Now, let's go back to the heart disease thing, right? In my theory, right, there are three divine energies. Okay. We have conscious state, willpower, and cravings, right? So consciousness is the mind, cravings is the gut, and then the heart is willpower. Okay. So willpower is also spirit. How much spirit do you have? Some people could say your spirit is your soul, like your divine energy, like the ability to put in energy to go do something, right? Because you might be conscious, you might have a craving, but if you don't have the will, you can't move. It literally disables you from moving. When your heart's not good, you can't get anything in control, right? You lose control of yourself. And so your willpower, your heart, your soul is going to be affected by the way you treat the conscious state and the cravings. So when someone's dealing with a deficit, they're going to start to struggle with the way their heart can function, because your heart is essentially the mechanism of kind of guiding you in what's going on with your body and where your deficits lie. Because when it's at full capacity, you're going to be able to put all your energy into something. When it's struggling to sustain itself, you're going to start losing the will to live, literally, like willpower. You lose willpower. So you take your heart, right? And you say this is a spiritual disease because it's a heart disease, spiritual disease. Put heart and soul, right? So soul disease, spiritual disease. Now, when you do it this way, you can start to see there's some commonalities in why this does take place, why this happened, because it's actually a mental health slash spiritual health problem at the end of the day. And what do I mean by that? Well, when you look at the way the mind and body work together, they affect very distinct places inside of the human experience that will innately affect the heart long term because of the impact it can have on it. So if it affects the mind, well, then what's happening, right? You're stressing out the mind, your heart's racing more, you're feeling that pressure, it's pushing you. So that's going to cause an experience where you're going to feel the sensation as it's pumping you up, right? So it's making you expend excess energy, right? Because it's tiring you out because you're stressed out. So when you stress the heart out, right, it's going to work harder, which is why stress can kill you. That's why they say that, because you're literally overworking the heart when it's not necessary. The other part is that if you don't take care of your cravings, right, your fulfillment, and you just keep filling up, filling up, filling up, and you're never fulfilled, and you just keep going and going and going, you're going to end up affecting your bloodstream, because the more that you just eat without any kind of consequence, without being conscious of what's going on, you're going to end up being unhealthy to the point where it starts impacting your heart. Your heart literally can't pump appropriately, right? Because it's pumping all this bad blood through it. So it's having a hard time pumping. So it gets tired. I'm tired. It starts feeling that lack of energy. So that depressed state starts to impact the energy. So now, if you start lacking care for your fulfillment and you start just filling up with whatever, then that lack of care is going to end up affecting your heart as well. So if you stress out, you'll die. And if you just give into your cravings, you're going to die, right? Because your heart ends up working harder. And it's in a very important organ. Any organ that you overuse is going to end up dying because it doesn't have the way to recover that energy. It doesn't have the way to recover that unhealthy habit, right? Because your heart just has to keep pumping regardless. So if you keep stressing it out, it doesn't get a chance to stop. It almost has to shut you down. Like if people have an anxiety attack, they're going to shut down. If people have a heart attack, they're going to shut down too, right? You got to bring them back. And so either way, you're going to deal with struggles with energy, focus, attention, all that stuff when you're dealing with some kind of problem related to the heart, right? So the heart is a super important thing that you have to keep taking care of, or else again, you're going to lose your abilities. You're going to lose your will. You're not going to want to do anything. You're not going to feel good enough, energized enough to do anything because you keep draining yourself from not taking care of the systems that exist within the human mechanism, right? So we have to take care of our stress so that we don't put the heart in a pressurized position. We have to take care of the gut so that we allow the heart to be fluid when it's pumping. And when it beats appropriately and flows appropriately, it gives us the most will and desire to move forward because all the energy that we get, instead of it being used just to keep us alive, it gets to be used to keep us to thrive. So we actually get to move forward in our health and our abilities because we've taken care of the heart mechanism. And so you have more spirit, more drive, more confidence. You feel better about yourself because, again, you're giving in to certain cravings, but you're also being conscientious of what you need to do in your life. And so you're not stressed out, you're not lacking fulfillment. And so you're resting appropriately and you feel good about your outcomes. You feel good about your progress and the way you're living, the sense of direction. And so that allows you to push forward and keep living your best life because you feel the healthiest with your sense of direction, right? You feel good with where you're going. You feel empowered by you taking care of your responsibilities and also finding ways to enjoy life because you want to work, right, to get off the stress, but you want to have fun to get into fulfillment, and then you want to rest so that you can continue this process, right? Work, play, rest. And that's really the problem with today's society. We don't have people that can enjoy life. We don't have people that can actually sit there and be able to like live a comfortable life because they're uncomfortable, they're imbalanced. And remember what I say about this too. When you imbalance your different minds, whether it's your stress or your fulfillment brain, your heart starts to lose its personality because your energy stops going into being yourself and it starts going into worrying about other things. So you're either worrying about a future or worrying about a past, right? You're either living in the past or predicting a future, right? So you stop living in reality, and again, that's that downward spiral again, right? If you stop living in the moment, if you stop being honest with yourself, you start to spiral because you're not living authentic to who you really are and your overall process. So I recommend that people do their best to set their schedule, follow through with what their responsibilities are, so that you can take the credit for doing what you said you were going to do anyways, for living a more fulfilling life. Because at the end of the day, you're the only one that can bring up your own value, right? And again, our heart is our spirit, it's our energy. So when our heart really desires something, we're going to put a lot of energy and effort. So when I have some kind of project that I'm working on, something that I need to get done, and I put all my energy into it, I'm going to feel like my energy was used appropriately. Like I'm not wasting my battery just sitting there whining. It's like turning something on, but it has a battery, so you just let it sit there. You're just going to die at some point. You got to turn it off and use it as you need it so that it has the most battery, right? So that's the way, same thing we work. If you leave something on, you're going to just burn, 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 burn. You got to use all that energy that you have to the appropriate amount, and you're going to feel very like fulfilled in the end, like, I got exactly what I needed done. Then you take that same energy and you put it into having fun and you focus it. So you just enjoy life for the fullest at what you're doing. And then you do it to rest. You rest well. You get ready for the next day. You have plans. You have things you're looking forward to. And you just set yourself up for success so that you can do that next thing and enjoy it, right? So this is how we live a more fulfilling life. This is how we balance ourselves out. We get into a flow state, right? Another thing I can talk about right now with the flow state, now that we're all kind of on that same topic, this is why the different brains are so important. It even affects the way we look at creativity. Creativity is I need to be able to have imagination, which kids are really good at going with the flow, right? Imagining whatever, oh, this, and then you're gonna play that Iron Man, and you're gonna do that thing with Spider-Man. You're gonna do like everything has like a thing that it's doing, right? There's a something. And so the way you have some kind of interaction with something allows it to become something more fluid because they're able to kind of go in any sense of direction they want without feeling a hindrance. So this is that flow state. This is just going with the flow. Literally, there's no concentration. It's just go, go, go. So that's feelings. Kids are really good at having that. They're not so good at focus, right? So this is where adults come in. Adults are really good at focusing. They can focus. right? So they can put pressure to make sure something comes out right. So in order to be creative, you need to both have that fluid, right? The juices going with that pressure from concentration to be able to make something happen that you're trying to make happen. So you can focus in that information, focus in that concentration, because without that flow state, nothing comes out. And without the concentration, nothing gets like hit. And this is the same thing I said as having a boat in water, right? So the water is the imagination, and then you have the wind that you're blowing in the sail to give it a sense of direction. But without the water, you're not boat's not going anywhere. But without a sense of direction, you're not flowing anywhere either. So you need the flow state and this to work together, which also is why the idea of thinking like a child is actually a paradox. And the paradox is that you can't think like a child because children don't necessarily think. And so the reason why it's so hard to think like a child is because you're just feeling, not thinking. And adults have a hard time not thinking about things, not being conscientious about things. It's a state of consciousness. So once you're conscientious of outcomes, once you're conscientious of what's happening, then you can't be just in your feelings. You actually have to understand things. And this is where kids are really good at just kind of going with their flow state. As long as you don't put a barrier, they'll just keep creating in their own state. They'll just keep, like water, like I said, running in any direction. When you put a limit, they'll eventually flow over because they got to find a way to express themselves. So you want to kind of give them that flow state. So the more that you kind of build it so they kind of flow with itself, the easier it is for the child to find a flow state, right? As adults, again, we want pressure so that we can have a creative state, because all flow is too much, because then it doesn't actually get it made into anything, and too much concentration is too much pressure, nothing gets created. So you need a little bit of a balance in there. But yeah, creativity has all to do with feelings and our conscious state, so our consciousness and how we see it. So again, I've just been seeing a lot of interesting commonalities and how the different brains can impact the different parts of our lives, and a lot of insight on how it affects the human system. For example, if you look at the story of Adam and Eve and the apple and the devil and all that and the snake, I've been thinking about that lately, and I have this very specific thing I've been thinking about when it comes to that, and it's that in the story, right? So before they eat the apple, they lack conscious state. They lack the truth. They lack knowledge, right? Because it's from the tree of knowledge, right? So they lack knowledge. And so for me, that's not free will, because you're just an autopilot. If you don't know what you're doing, that's not free will, right? Free will is when you're conscious of what you're doing. They're not knowing, they're just existing. So by eating the apple, there you have to accept from this serpent that there is now you conscious state, which is awareness that evil can exist. Because when you're just an autopilot, when you're just going based on feelings, there's no conscious state. But when you have conscious state, you have to understand that destruction and bad is a part of the life now, that you have to be conscientious that there are negatives in this world. Prior to this apple, you were in ignorance, and ignorance seems like bliss. Ignorance is like Eden, right? We don't know any better. But then you're not actually dealing with free will, because in order to have free will, you have to have conscious state. And conscious state is the apple eating, right? So now that you have conscious state, you have to accept that the people around you could potentially want to danger you or hurt you. It's like, I like to say, like, you watch those Disney movies with the kind of double meanings, and now as an adult, you're very conscious of what the joke's actually saying. You're aware now in ways that you never would have been aware before, because you're conscious of what's happening. So yeah, conscious state, awareness, these kind of things are interesting for me, because again, it shows us that there's something more going on with our existence, that we can understand ourselves on a deeper level. And by understanding ourselves, it opens up our doors to different opportunities in this world, especially when you start to live more in the moment. The more you live in the moment, the more you understand that, hey, if I'm living in this right now, I'm going to get the most out of my life. And sometimes you're going to have experiences, opportunities that pop up, and you have to be able to take on that opportunity or not in that moment, because it's coming to you, right? You didn't pick it, the universe provided it. And that might lead to one of the best nights of your life, but you have to take that opportunity. But you also have to trust your gut. If your gut says don't do it, don't go, then you got to trust your gut and say today's not the day. Today's not the day. But trust your gut, right? If your intuition says do it or don't do it, your intuition's guiding you. Use your mind to help your intuition guide you better, because if you close off, then you're limiting yourself from the potential growth that you could have. Now, going back to the Adam and Eve thing in the apple, so willpower, not willpower, but your ability to have consciousness creates the awareness, conscious state. So when someone's overly conscious, right, it's because they know too many things, right? What if they're self-conscious? Well, they're conscious of themselves, right? They understand that they're, analyzing what they can do to. So being overly conscious can actually be a detriment to you, and that's why the voices in the back of your head are telling you things, right? Telling you the bad things, or they're speaking, because now you have to accept that in order to have consciousness, you're going to have to accept that there's evil energy in this world, that there are not everything's a positive, that there are negatives in this world. There is going to be chaotic energy. Because again, you have to accept that in order for you to have conscious state, there is a double-edged sword here. And so when people can understand that, then they can really be able to apply that to their own lives and be able to benefit from understanding, hey, if I know that my energy, the way I act towards people and what I do can have an impact on them, then I can be more accountable to how I do that, because again, that's going to change the way you interact with others, and again, empower you or take away your power. So you want to be able to feel empowered. You want to be able to feel like, hey, I'm doing something with my life. I'm moving forward. I'm able to understand with consciousness how I can jump, go overcome these hurdles instead of feeling limited and left behind. So when I'm able to overcome these hurdles and really make something of my life, then this is going to allow me to use my conscious state at its full potential instead of being in my self-conscious state, right? Because really, you're only going to have one sense of direction. You're either going to put that towards developing further, or you're going to put that in limiting yourself and staying stagnant in where you're at. So I recommend people move forward, put their life in a positive direction, and feel good about where they're going with their life, because at the end of the day, that's going to help them feel the most sense of fulfillment, because they're doing it in a balanced state. They're taking care of both sides of themselves, and they're living an ultimately more fulfilling life. So consciousness, very important to navigate, or else it will be your detriment. Because how many times, again, I'll say this. This is interesting. I tell this to people all the time. So you have your mind and your gut, right? And we'll talk about which one's the one that's going to keep you the safest. It's funny. And the reality is that a lot of people will say your conscious state, right? Because, obviously consciousness is being aware, right? But that's not the thing that's kept you alive the longest. It's actually your feelings have kept you alive the longest. Like your stomach. Your stomach has been throwing up things and being way aware of like your environment and feeling vibes way before. Your feelings actually kept you alive a lot longer than your conscious state. And I actually have a theory that people's conscious state gets them killed a lot more than their feelings. How many times have you felt, I shouldn't go do something? This is going to go bad. This is going to happen. You have a feeling, but you don't listen to it. Well, the problem is when people pass away, we can't ask them, hey, were you feeling self-conscious about that? Were you feeling weird about this situation? Was there something that was telling you don't go? Because they passed away. But I'll tell you right now, on average, on a lot, very average, every child that exists essentially before they have any consciousness is going based on what? Feelings. They've been feeling their entire since their development. They've been feeling, and so feeling is what's been helping them survive. And this is what people don't understand. Your feelings is the most accurate tool in existence. It is more accurate than seeing, than hearing. It literally has helped you survive in all environments you've ever been, because feelings can even tell you what the subconscious can't, because it is literally the subconscious. It is the subconscious. There's even a book called The Body Keeps the Score, and it talks about that the body remembers, because muscle memory, it remembers things. This is why if you learn a dance routine, it's probably easy to go back in that routine, because it remembers that muscle memory is there, and it's going to remember things. It is the one thing that has kept you alive the longest. I can't tell you how many people who have been overly intoxicated were able to get home, to get to their house while being blacked out, and still made it night after night. Even though, again, that's not recommended, but people can do it because of muscle memory. Their body already knows what it's doing. So it just goes into autopilot. and just lets it do things. So your gut really has been keeping you alive the longest in out of everything in your body, right? It has guided you the best. But the problem is from a young age, they take away kids' feelings, doing things like, oh, go hug your uncle, go hug your aunt, go for when you force people or kids to do things that make them uncomfortable, they don't respect their feelings. But again, now that you are hurting their feelings, they're less likely to be able to survive this world because you survive based on feelings, right? Based on trusting your intuition and using your conscious state to like help advance your intuition. You're supposed to use your intuition and then use your mind of how are we going to make that happen? How are we going to keep ourselves safe? Right? So I got the vibes. I understand now. I'm getting the information from the world. Now my what am I going to do with it? Like how am I going to respond? How am I going to use my conscious state to figure out and map out to think about the solution to this problem, to this issue? I'm not going to use my thoughts to try to understand, like to question, to like verify it. I'm accepting my feelings and I'm already preparing my conscious state to respond appropriately. So that's why we want to respect feelings. And that's why they haven't been respecting our feelings since a young age, because it gives us power to stand up for ourselves. It gives us power to put boundaries down with people. Another thing I'm mention this too, something about boundaries. I used to talk about this a lot when I was first doing therapy. And this is just something that really does help people kind of understand a little better. But if you think about it, right, kids have a hard time sharing, right? They're just not, I don't want to share, it's mine, right? But adults have, some adults, there are adults out there that have a hard time putting limits, like giving away, like helping, like giving themselves to the point where they're exhausted, like, because that's what a parent's supposed to do, right? Is to give, right? They're supposed to be giving more than receiving. They're supposed to be able to handle more without having. So adults tend to be able to handle more, right? Be conscious about things, and kids tend to be the ones that don't want to give things away, that are a little more on the selfish side, you could call it, or more on the reserve side. Now, why does this matter? Well, because when it comes to boundaries, you'll notice that the kid brain, the gut, has a limit on what it's willing to do, and the conscious state has a limit on what it's willing to give, right? So at this point, what you want to do is you want to say, the kid brain is going to be where you push, and the adult brain is going to be the limit you're allowing, right? So you're going to allow this much, but I'm not going to allow this much, and they work as a team, right? So no more than this and no more than this, and they create a boundary for you. So when you're just kid brain, you won't give anything away. You'll be really greedy and like really selfish. And then when you're too much adult brain, you don't have any boundaries, and you just keep giving and giving and giving, and so then you always feel like you have nothing for you, right? So one, you feel selfish or anything that anybody takes anything from you, you're like, that's mine, and you start rebelling. And then the other one is the opposite, right? Where you'll keep giving and giving, but when you say, hey, I need something, they're like, oh, I don't know what to do for you, man. No, I don't have it right now. Da, da, da. So you feel like, hey, what the hell? Like no one ever helps me. I feel abandoned. I feel drained. I feel empty. And so you want to use these two sides to help find that balance within yourself of like, hey, this is what I'm willing to do, and this is not what I'm willing to do, so that you can find happy medium. And that's going to allow you to feel the most, overall balance in your life. It helps you find a good like way to communicate what you need without feeling overwhelmed and frustrated, which is another thing. I see a lot of people struggle with feeling drained from communication styles and skills. And I would say that one of the best things you guys can do about that, like straight up to be able to help you like with communication, is don't expect a positive response from people. Like don't expect a response at all. You should see communication as a more thoughtful process where I'm like going to give you information from my perspective, and I'm not putting any expectation on a response from you, right? So, especially if I'm just trying to get my point across, I don't need you to agree with me. I just need you to hear me. So, I'm going to provide you with this information, and you can do with it as you need, because I'm just simply here to share my perspective so that we can have some common ground. But at the end of the day, I'm not here to satisfy their perspective. I'm not here to push my agenda. I'm here to put my point, allow them to interact, and sustain myself. This is called assertive communication. But it's really important to be able to assert yourself so that the person understands you mean business, but I'm not going to pressure you into changing. I'm going to show you this is my limit. This is where I'm at. And that's that sweet spot we want to find when it comes to negotiation, is how do I find that sweet spot between allowing enough so that I feel comfortable, but not too much where I feel uncomfortable, and finding that happy place. Because the closer we can get to that happy place, the more regulated we're going to feel when we are interacting with people, right? So that way, it's like I don't feel drained being around people because no one can drain me. I'm the one that controls my energy, right? Another thing that I've been hearing from some of my people that I work with: how do I start a new relationship without impacting the progress that I've already made with myself? And it's very simple, super simple. You keep doing what you're doing with your schedule and routine. You keep doing what you're doing, right? And then you add them into it. And if they are able to adjust and come along with it, then that means they're willing to work with you, right? But you don't change your living situation, your style of existence for another person. You allow the worlds to integrate over time, right? Trust is built over time, right? So trust is consistency over time. So we want to make sure that before we jump into a relationship, that we can have consistency over time. So we're looking at keeping that flow state going with each other so that we can both appreciate what we bring to the table, right? And so again, we'll plan this, and then that'll work. And then we'll plan this and that'll work. And so we wouldn't change our schedule, times, routines for this person. We would add them and integrate them into the ones that already exist because we value our time, energy, and attention. And we're not going to change that. But we'll make accommodations and we'll make changes to the way we're living because we value them that much. And so, really, you can teach the person that it's actually that you value them so much that you're willing to make changes with your schedule. Because prior to them, nobody could change your schedule. Like that wasn't something you were willing to do. But because you appreciate their relationship so much, you're willing to add them into future schedules so that you guys can be on the same page together. And so that is showing them a healthy form of a relationship. That is saying, "Hey, look, I'm willing to work with you. I appreciate you, and I like what we're doing. Let's keep doing that as a team." And again, it helps build things piece by piece. When you rush into things, again, the details are going to be missed. The consistency is going to be missed. It's better to build a house over time, making sure all the pieces are where they need to be, right? Consistently over time, really putting that effort every time, like putting that consistent energy in it every time, because that's how you build even a castle, right? The best castles that were ever built were not built in a day. They were built over time with craftsmanship, right? And that's how we build our castle. We're building our dream, we're building our life. And when we can really appreciate what we're building, then the people that we're allowing into those environments are going to appreciate it just as much as we do. And on top of that, we can hold people to a higher standard. We can hold them accountable for their actions and behaviors because we've been holding ourselves accountable as well. So when we work on developing our healthy life, our kingdom, whatever you want to call it, our little space in this world, then when people want to join it, we can allow them to join. I want people to join my life. I'm more than happy, but there are limits to what I'm going to allow. I want healthy people in my life. I want the best versions of people in my life, or at least that they're working towards that, right? They're actively putting in effort to be a better version of them. They actively have, their life in a direction where they feel like they're growing and they want to change. Because I don't have the energy and I'm not willing to give the energy to keep going backwards and trying to pick people up that aren't there or don't need it, right? I'd rather value my own time, energy, and attention and inspire those around me that may benefit from that information, but ultimately stick to what I need to do so I can move forward and do the best with my life with what I'm doing, right? And inspire those that are willing to take the inspiration, the motivation from my examples to apply to themselves and then self-develop. So I want to be able to help people, grow into the people they need to be and they want to be. But I can't do that if I don't model that. And this happens a lot in couples too. I tell this to couples all the time. If you ever want to change your partner, you have to change yourself. Because when you start to become a high valued person, right? This puts pressure on other people around you to change. And all you're doing is living in a healthier environment or a healthy lifestyle, right? You're taking care of your stress, you're enjoying your fun, your heart is starting to get more fulfillment and rest, and it's starting to be less stressed out. And so you're literally getting your life together. And as you continue to do this, your value is going to keep increasing, increasing, increasing over time because you're living at a higher value life, like a higher value rate of life, right? Because the things that you do with your time, energy and attention are all significant to your personal growth and development. And so you keep showing over and over again that you're willing to grow and develop into a healthier human being, a better person. And so every time that you increase your value, you're going to put pressure on the person to meet the call, right? And when you have healthier communication skills, you're able to communicate with them in a way where they don't feel that negative pressure. They feel like you're on their side, you believe in them, right? And on top of that, if they aren't willing to change, then it just tells you right there and then, like, this isn't going to fucking work for me. Like, I already put all my energy into this, I put all my effort into this. At the end of the day, it didn't matter, and you move forward, and then you can move on with your life and be happy with your life because you're not sitting there being miserable with somebody who at the end of the day wasn't going to change anyways. I see this all the time. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, 100%, there are chaotic energies that feed off people's souls 100%, like fucking leeches. So these people will come in. I can't tell you, like, I actually believe that there are some people that I would consider like succubuses, right? It's like the things that they say, like they are willingly know that they are taking people's energy. Like they know this. They know that they're not being healthy people. They're aware that they're hurting people. They're aware they're chaotic. They even accept that I know I'm bad. I know I'm negative. I know I'm not willingly saying I know that I'm a bad person and still doing it. That to me is definition of chaotic energy 101, right? People that are not willing to take accountability, to grow, to change. And these people keep feeding off people who are willing to give them their what? Their energy. And it's until that you hit them with the truth, until you no longer want to live in the chaos, until you want to repent for the bullshit you've been doing and saying, I'm done doing this shit. I want to change my life. I want to be a better person. You're going to keep struggling with these types of individuals who are going to sit there and drain you of your energy. And until you can have self-respect with your conscious state, with your cravings, with your willpower, and really try, like, take care of your mind, body, and heart, spirit, you take care of those things, you're going to keep struggling because people are going to keep sucking out your energy. Anytime you're around people that overthink, drain. People that don't want to be thinking, idiots, drain. People that are overly emotional, drain. People that are just numb and don't want to talk, drained. They're going to drain you, right? They're going to drain you. They're going to try to drain you, right? So you have to put in that boundary and say, hey, not going to happen with me. This is my limit with you. This is what I'm going to do. This is how we're going to move forward. And so you put those limits down and you get more out of these relationships because now they start to respect you for not allowing them to disrespect you. Now, some people are going to want to take your energy. They want to be your friend. They want to see how vulnerable you are. But again, once you first start hitting people with the truth and using your divine energy to really like waking people up, they're either going to change their life because they've been waiting for someone like you to show up to change their life because they've been lost, or they're going to try to take your light away. They're going to try to start rumors about you. They're going to try to start hurting you. They're going to try to start finding a way to get under your skin. But the more that you just stay determined to do the best of whatever you're doing, they have no power over you. And as long as you keep living and being a healthy, good, disciplined person, that you know what you're doing, where you're doing, and what your purpose is, they can't touch you. So the more that you live a fulfilling, regulated, positive, good karma based life, well, everything's going to kind of fall into place because no matter when people try to talk negative about you, when they try to look down at you, and they try to like put you in a bad place, it makes them look bad because you're such a positive light in the community that just by somebody talking down about you, they already look like they're the negative person. So you don't even have to do much work because these people expose themselves for being horrible people. So really just take care of your energy, take care of what you're doing, and they will little by little have to leave you alone because they know at the end of the day that you're going to expose them for what they're not working on, for their deficits. And so that scares them. They'd rather avoid you. So just remember what your power is when you start working on yourself. And the other thing too, people are always afraid of hurting people, but I want you to remember, like, what are you really hurting, right? And what does that mean? Like, I had someone that was saying like they felt like they were being disrespectful, right, to people because they called them out, or like they'd be honest. But we also said, okay, like, okay, they feel disrespected. But what about people that work on themselves? People that you find that, do tend to be pretty good in their life and tend to like have some sense of self respect. Do you tend to find the same problems with them? Do you tend to find it hard to talk to them? Do you tend to find it difficult to have a conversation with them? And they're like, no, that never happens. And that right there is an example of, just because you're having conversational challenges with people doesn't necessarily mean it's a you thing. It could be the person and the people that you surround yourself with. It's like that idea that misery loves company. When you have somebody that doesn't want to make active change in their life and they like to play the victim, or at least continue to put themselves in a victim like position, then they lack accountability. And who's going to be around people that lack accountability? Other people that can also validate the lack of accountability, because people that are accountable will start to find people who also know how to understand accountability, because they have more respect for people that are accountable because they're willing to make the changes to improve their life. And so it's just a natural order of things when people start to validate who they are and understand that, hey, I need to be more accountable, and that's how I actually get true change in my life, and that they actually get that true change that they're looking for. So the more accountable that they are for their life, the better they're going to feel over time with self-development and knowing that they're making a healthy amount of progress, and that they're going to be able to, move forward in their life and feel like that balance is what's giving them their power. So accountability is, again, very important, and we want to make sure that people are able to, focus on their personal needs to change, so that the people around them can also benefit from those active changes. Because if I change my life, I'm only helping the people around me change their lives, and it's vice versa, right? So when I start living in a more productive, happier way, I'm a more positive influence and role model for the people around me. So naturally, we work as a team where I can give them energy and support, and they can give me energy support, because we're supporting each other in our best versions of ourselves, right? It's also better for, people to bounce back in life when they're living an authentic, healthy, productive life. So when you take responsibility for your outcomes and you actively put in effort to improve your life, well, you start to raise your value, and the people around you can also appreciate that value, and then everybody starts to naturally just respect you more. You start to get better feedback from people. People start to come to you looking for information because you just have a energy to you, and an elevation. I mean, even the way someone talks with their voice, right? When you hear somebody talking that has a lot of confidence, they have a certain way of speaking, then you can feel that confidence from their voice. And when you have people that lack confidence, you can also feel that in their voice too, like they're struggling to communicate. They're maybe like overthinking everything they're saying, so that they don't actually make any coherent sentences. And so there's a lot of factors that you can see are represented when people lack security. And again, the voice is a really good indicator to see where people are in their sense of security, especially when you start asking questions, when they talk about certain information, when they talk about certain topics. The way they approach those topics and that information is going to express a lot about what's going on with their confidence regarding the information. Because once you ask enough questions, the type of responses that you're getting are going to be very insightful on like what the person knows, and being honest and truthful. And again, once you start lacking truth in your life, once you start living in the chaos, you start losing those abilities that we've talked about in the past, where you start to lose your ability to look into the future and predict things, or look into the past and save your soul, and fight the demons off from your past. So you can't live in the present as much. But yeah, we want to be able to, again, live in the present. That's the best place for your heart to be receiving your energy. And again, there's that three system setup. You have your body, which is the car, the vehicle. You have your heart, which is the like gasoline, the energy source, and then you have your consciousness, which is like the HUD, the vision. And this also applies to understanding divinity. Something that's come to my mind lately is imagination is a huge component of understanding how to look at divinity, or how to look at the universe from like a spiritual standpoint. So when you see patterns and you recognize things and you can start listening, like tuning into a frequency, you start hearing things you never heard before. You start seeing things you didn't see. You start seeing patterns. You start seeing connections that you never saw because you've opened up your feelings to receiving information. So it comes to you just as much as a craving comes to you. When you open up your feelings, when you open up your senses, you start to sense different things and they will start to express themselves as information. So as you sense the different things in your environment's going to start feeding you information. You're going to start understanding the patterns that exist in the universe, right? So you need that sense of imagination to imagine the impossible, to imagine the spiritual, the divine, right? So feelings are really important for connecting on a ether level, like on a more like emotional level. So imagination is going to help me create and connect in ways that I wouldn't be able to without feeling. But I need consciousness to focus in on all the little patterns, right? I need consciousness to actually make the connections. So feelings is receiving the information, but my conscious state is connecting all the pieces together. So I need them to work as a team for me to see what is divine in this world, right? I like to say that our heart is our northern star, and the northern star helps you, at night follow your path. And so cravings is like the thing, like again, the water, and then like the mind is the ability to see the direction, and the heart is the guiding light, like go that way, right? So it's kind of like there's a team effort here where the northern star is helping drive me like that. I know where to go because it's like the compass from Captain Jack Sparrow, where he has the little thing where he can like use his heart to identify. So he's able to do that in the same way that we can connect with other things. So yeah, for me, it's important to have that concept of being able to connect with things, being able to know what we want, using that driving force, because it's a part of the human experience. It's a part of who we are. It's a part of achieving what you want from this world and taking care of the vessel, as you could call it, right? We're like drones in a way. You got to take care of your drone, but your drone has a lot more abilities than any other drone. It's got a lot of programming. It's got a lot of buttons, got a lot of options. Yeah, it's got some limitations, but at least your drone can be fixed, in a way where it can fix itself. You only get one though, so you get one drone, right? You get one human drone you get to use. So it's like, how do you want to live your life? Like, how do you want to experience this existence? How do you want to apply yourself in the world? In what way do you feel that you are needing to find that higher purpose, that higher vibration? And really, all the answers come from inside. That's the mistake that a lot of philosophers and a lot of people have made in this world. They're always looking for information from the outside when so many more answers are actually on the inside. And when you can look at the inside starts to explain how the universe works because we have the universe inside of us. But we have to tap into what we are and who we are in order to get the answers that we seek from the outside. You want to have a fulfilling life. You want to understand where we come from and why we exist and what are we. You can look inside of you. The answers exist, but you have to be open to receive the information. Because again, just like a craving, you don't pick a craving. It just happens. A lot of information, some of the most insane or like mind-blowing concepts that I've come up with, I didn't think about. They came to me. It was like the pattern was already there. I just hadn't seen it yet. But once I was able to connect the pieces, once I was able to realize all these things worked as a team, that something changed my perspective. And then I was able to think about how that connects to other things. But that initial equation of how it works, that came from existing. That came from, wow, I just put two and two. Like I just saw the click. Like it just clicked in my mind that happened. Or sometimes I literally say things from my gut that I wasn't planning on saying and it came out. And then I'm like, but that makes perfect sense. So I truly believe there is some kind of common connected intelligence amongst us as people. And when we tap into it, when I'm able to give people that information, because it's so common sense, and because it's just a human experience that we've had, it just helps them click faster. It's like if I give your firmware an update, you're already ready for it because it makes sense to your operating system. Our operating systems, if you give it the right information, it can update the firmware, but you have to be able to break it down to it so that it's a universal thing. Like it will universally help all of these PCs because it's a universal firmware, right? When you start getting into specifics, yeah, it gets a little harder because then you're trying to program individual people with certain things. But when you're uploading to all computers, because it's a, like, let's say it's a Windows update compared to, like, like a hard drive update or something. When you're updating a firmware, it's easier to update a lot more things because a lot more things already have that type of operating system. So the more you break it down to just the core human experience, the better that you can update people on what's happening in life so they can understand the system better, especially if they already have experience with the system. So when you're talking to a fully grown adult who's already had these experiences throughout their life, it makes a lot more sense for them to be able to break things down and make active changes because they've been through so much more stuff that it's easier for them to understand what's wrong. Same thing for, like, if I have a mechanic who just has been casually working on certain cars, they're probably going to get a lot more information if I have a new guy that just started the other day, right? Because you're around the cars long enough, even if you're not the best mechanic, you're going to have a lot more information and a ways to adjust because you already have a basic understanding. So the more experience that you have in life, the easier it is to adjust when you have basic understandings. It can be kind of challenging when you just start out because you don't have that kind of like foundations developed yet, that basic insight. You're still learning how to use your mechanisms. So the challenges that you're going to face being a younger adult immediately out greater just because of lack of experience. So just something to think about, especially because brain isn't fully developed yet, and that can be add some extra challenges too. And that's another thing too. People like will judge themselves based on who they were years ago when they were younger. It's like you didn't. I tell this to parents all the time. Just because your kid's born with legs doesn't mean they work when they're born. Like, things don't always grow into develop into until they're ready. So if you were making decisions, like immature decisions, when you were at an immature age, that makes sense. You're not done maturing. But it's once somebody reaches maturity that they have to actively make a conscious choice to change their life, using their heart to change their behaviors, giving in to some of their cravings to help encourage them to want to live life, but to use their consciousness to limit their cravings and use their cravings as a reason to live for ways they have to live. So you use the have to for the want to for the life, right? For the balance. So life comes down again always to a balance. We want to balance our stress, we want to balance our depression or our fulfillment, and then we want to rest appropriately. And so that's pretty much what we got going on for the last couple of weeks. It's been an interesting time. One update: my grandpa did pass away this past week. Yeah, he passed away in a car accident. So yeah, so that did happen. So that's something that has affected my week. The reason I didn't do my podcast yesterday was I was learning how to program my music stuff. So I'm excited to start programming some music stuff. So I'm hoping to make some tracks under the name Dr. Brainrot, maybe start some EDM stuff. So we'll see where that kind of heads. But that'll be some projects I'll be working on in the background. Again, I appreciate everybody who supports what I'm doing, the projects that I work on. We'll see about having guests come on. So at some point, I do plan on having people come back on the podcast because I do enjoy talking to other men about these topics and being able to like socialize a little more. But we'll see where we take this. Again, I appreciate everybody's support. I do have some compilations on my YouTube channel, so I've been adding compilations from previous videos on my TikToks and stuff. So I've got all those set up underneath the videos on my YouTube channel here. And yeah, guys. So again, it's been cool. Keep taking care of things. Remember to take care of mind, body, spirit. It's part of the human existence. The less that you have things scheduled on a routine, the more energy you're going to drain. the more you're going to be hurting, and the more of a downward spiral you're going to start putting yourself until you lose all your balance in life. Okay. So, and one other thing, sometimes you have to fall all the way down to get back up. Sometimes you're too far gone to save it. So don't be afraid to fall, dust off, and get back up. All right. Take it easy, guys. Later.